Network. I am Gary Franchi. We are live right now, and it's 7:06 p.m. in Washington, D.C., 78 degrees, partly cloudy skies, 33% chance of precipitation, winds at 2 miles per hour. It's June 16th, 2026, and we're streaming on all platforms. Gary Franchi here, Next News Network, Chief White House Correspondent, delivering the latest White House news from the past 24 hours in partnership with our streaming friends at Trump Daily Post. Tonight's rundown centers on President Trump leading a full day of high-level diplomacy at the G7 in France, while also moving to strengthen America's national security team with his nomination of Jay Clayton for Director of National Intelligence. President Trump spent the day in Evian, France, for a packed G7 schedule focused on Ukraine, the Middle East, development, and direct bilateral engagement with key regional partners. And according to the daily guidance, the president's agenda included a working session with G7 leaders and Ukraine, bilateral meetings with the Emir of Qatar, and the President of the United Arab Emirates, a working lunch on the Middle East, an afternoon session on developing countries, and evening events with world leaders. The White House and the president's Truth Social account have both been active throughout the day, underscoring a clear message that President Trump is leading serious diplomacy abroad while keeping America's interests front and center. The same guidance also highlighted a major personnel move back home, with President Trump nominating Jay Clayton for the Director of National Intelligence, a pick praised by leading Republicans and senior national security voices as experience, capable, and ready to serve. The big question is, will Jay Clayton fill the shoes of Tulsi Gabbard in all the investigations that she has spearheaded? That is an answer we are looking for. But from the pool report, the G7 working session involving Ukraine and President Zelensky that began at 9:26 a.m. local time under restricted access. The session details were not disclosed publicly, but it marked the start of the day's central diplomatic track as leaders gathered to discuss the ongoing conflict. A follow-up pool report noted that as the session got underway, President Trump and the French President Emmanuel Macron had not yet entered the room, while other leaders were already present and mingling. Zelensky had earlier been seen walking with Macron on the venue field. Minutes later, the pool confirmed that President Trump had arrived at the G7 and joined the working session, greeting fellow leaders as the summit moved into full gear. It was another visible sign of active American participation at the highest level. From a later pool update, President Trump, President Macron, and Zelensky held a meeting before joining the larger G7 session and were the last three leaders to enter the room. German Chancellor Merz also presented President Trump with a Germany World Cup jersey bearing Trump 47 on the back, while Secretary of State Marco Rubio was seen speaking with the president as the press exited. President Trump then met bilaterally with the Emir of Qatar, Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, with Secretary Rubio, Treasury Secretary Bessent, and Commerce Secretary Lutnick in attendance. From the pool report, the president made clear that Iran will not be allowed to develop a nuclear weapon and warned of severe consequences if any agreement is violated, while also praising Qatar's cooperation, investment, and continued partnership with the United States. In fuller remarks from that same bilateral, President Trump again pushed back on rumors about U.S. money going into Iran, saying the United States is not investing there. He also pointed to Qatar's commitment to invest more than $1 trillion in America, urged progress towards a Russia-Ukraine deal, and stressed continued American strength and responsibility in the Middle East. Later, in a bilateral meeting with the UAE president, the pool reported that President Trump discussed Iran, the Abraham Accords, and a memorandum of understanding. The president said Iran's relationship is now normalized, said he expects movement within 60 days, praised the UAE's early role in the Abraham Accords, and indicated that the MOU would be handled formally and shared in an orderly way. The G7 schedule also included the traditional family photo where President Trump stood alongside fellow G7 and partner leaders. Reporters were briefly allowed inside to capture the leaders seated around the working table, with President Trump positioned between President Macron and Prime Minister Modi. Back in the United States, the White House said that Vice President Vance will travel to Bethpage, New York on Wednesday to deliver remarks on the administration's effort to combat crime and fraud, reinforcing the Trump-Vance focus on law enforcement, accountability, and protecting the public. Taken together, the last 24 hours show an administration active on every level. President Trump leading from the front on the world stage, building momentum in critical diplomatic talks, and putting trusted leadership in place to protect the country at home. And with that, the White House update is complete. Let's turn now to the rest of the top stories that are shaping the day, and welcome everyone to this broadcast. It's great to see everybody here. Dave, Mrs. Pothead, Kenny, Kevin, Looney Rooney, Corinne Lynn, Ron the Don, everyone is filing in. Great to see you guys here. We are streaming on all platforms at Next News, at Trump Daily Post, on YouTube, Rumble, and even on Kick. So we've got lots of news we're going to be getting at today as we begin this broadcast. I'm going to check in with everything we've got lined up here. Of course, the big news right now is what happened with the UFC events, and major arrests have been made. We're going to give you all the details on that. Also, the latest on Gavin Newsom and his panicking, because now he is the hunted. We're going to be talking more detail about what happened with Iran. Very good news on that front. Also, anti-ICE saboteurs have been arrested. Antifa thugs, we're going to get to that. Also, the latest in the fraud scandal out of Minnesota related to Tim Walz, and of course the election system, more controversy coming out of California, and how the system is going to be fixed by President Trump if he can fix it. Now, we're going to get right into it. Brian, thank you for getting us all queued up, and we will begin. Tonight, the real headline is bigger than a terror plot. Yes, the FBI says it disrupted an alleged drone and sniper attack tied to the White House UFC Freedom 250 event. Yes, suspects are in custody, but the deeper story is this: America 250 is now crossed into national security territory. See, this was not just a fight night. It was a symbolic American event tied to President Trump, the White House, and a mass patriotic celebration so consequential that federal agents treated it like a counterterror priority. And that should stop every viewer in their tracks. So what exactly were they trying to hit? The venue, the crowd, or the idea behind it? Now, according to multiple reports, investigators say the alleged plan involved explosive-laden drones striking nearby buildings to trigger confusion and mass evacuation. Then, as frightened attendees moved, a pre-staged sniper team would allegedly open fire. And that's not random violence, that is psychological warfare aimed at panic, movement, and spectacle. And that's why the story matters far beyond one event. The target, if these allegations hold, was not simply the UFC. The target was the White House setting, the America 250 celebration, the symbolism of a huge public gathering, and the patriotic energy surrounding President Trump's vision of a proud national birthday. In other words, this was an attempt to turn a unifying American spectacle into a scene of chaos. And here's the part the corporate media will glide past. Once an event draws this kind of hostile attention, it means it has become nationally meaningful. America 250 is no longer just a commemoration under the Trump administration. It has become a symbol worth defending, and apparently in the eyes of enemies, worth attacking. And before we go further with all of the details, when stories like this remind you how much stress people carry every day, it also reminds you to take care of your own home and your health. Now, you've probably seen the clip, Joe Rogan sitting with Mel Gibson talking about people close to him who went through serious health struggles and then saw dramatic turnarounds. Rogan brings up light-based therapies and how they impact the body at a cellular level. Gibson says it's straight, this stuff works. And that got my attention because in my own life, I watched something very similar unfold. For a long time, my wife was dealing with constant discomfort and anxiety. It was one of those battles that drains a family quietly. Then I came across Jonathan Otto and red light therapy, and it opened my eyes. If you want to learn more, go to myredlight.com. Use NNN25 for individual items or NNN30 for bundles. It is certainly worth taking a look at. Now back to the bombshell details that show just how serious this operation really was. Now here's the twist that changes everything. The case may have started not with some massive surveillance breakthrough, but with a mother who saw warning signs in her 19-year-old son's behavior and made the call. From there, investigators reportedly uncovered signal chats, travel plans, weapons purchases, and alleged reconnaissance connected to a wider network stretching across multiple states. Think about that. A patriotic event at the White House, an America 250 crowd, and a plot pieced together from digital breadcrumbs and one family's alarm. And that's where this moves from headline into a national wake-up call. Fox News had this to say: 3 suspects identified in a plot to target the White House UFC event. Brian Omar Roa, Michael Allen Thomas arrested in California, charged with conspiracy to commit murder. Tyson Proper arrested in Ohio. So it was never just about a fight card. ABC takes us where the real story goes next. The FBI says the White House America 250 event drew an alleged explosive drone plot. The FBI disrupted the alleged plot targeting UFC Freedom 250 fight at the White House with explosive drones, according to multiple sources. An explosive drone plot. So the jump from celebration to the federal terror investigation. Polymarket adds the scope: 5 suspects in custody, 18 others reportedly still at large. FBI makes the announcement it busted a massive drone terror plot targeting White House UFC event, 5 suspects in custody. And that's where this gets even darker. MJ Truth Ultra lays out the alleged playbook: drones to trigger panic, then a sniper team waiting for the crowd. Oh my Lord. Terror plot. One suspect said the goal was to target billionaires and APAC recipients. Explosive-laden drones were planted to strike buildings near the event to spark mass panic and force crowd evacuation. Fleeing attendees would then be directed towards pre-staged sniper teams to shoot people as they ran. There was reportedly a possible second wave where attackers would storm the White House gates amid the chaos. The FBI learned of the threat on June 10th of this year through signal chat messages. Investigators identified 23 people involved in discussions about the plot from analysis of one suspect's phone and related communications. An initial arrest was made in Cincinnati, Ohio via a search warrant. Multiple additional suspects taken into custody. Reports indicate at least 5 in total. As of June 16th, some suspects had traveled to Fredericksburg, Virginia for final preparations. Here's some news as it was breaking.
News out of Washington, D.C. on a potential tragedy that's been averted. The FBI revealing earlier today it foiled an alleged terror plot that was set to target Sunday night's UFC Freedom event at the White House.
Officials say nearly 24 plotters were identified. They have 5 people in custody. The alleged plan featured explosive-packed drones hitting buildings near the event.
Then we are told they would steer the crowds toward a sniper team in waiting, ready to pick people off.
David Spunt is live in D.C. with the latest. David, this news just breaking. What do you know?
Well, I've reached out to several sources, and I'm awaiting some more details, Dana, on names and specific charges. We're told we will get some more information as the day unfolds. This involves nearly 24 people as part of this potential network, according to authorities, and details were uncovered on an app called Signal, which is an encrypted chat app. 5 are in custody. Fox Digital reporting investigators have 23 people on a list as part of this potential network of alleged plotters. Investigators tell Fox the plan was to use drones with explosives to hit buildings near the White House, which would force a mass evacuation and steer crowds toward a pre-staged sniper team. A, quote, second wave was allegedly planning to storm the White House.
So what you just heard wasn't about sports at all. It was about turning a patriotic gathering into chaos. Now, FBI disrupts terroristic drone sniper attack plot. Officials say the plan involved using drones to create panic, followed by sniper. Here's more from Todd Pirro.
Just into the Fox newsroom, the FBI disrupting this alleged plot targeting the UFC Freedom 250 event at the White House. Officials telling Fox a network of nearly 24 potential plotters were identified, with at least 5 people in custody right now. The suspects allegedly traveled to Fredericksburg, Virginia to make final preparations for the attack. And the alleged plan allegedly included explosive-packed drones hitting buildings near the event, forcing a mass evacuation, and then steering crowds, get this, toward a pre-staged sniper team. A second wave was then planned to storm the White House gate. The FBI first learned of the threat on June 10th and worked with law enforcement across multiple states to stop it. FBI Director Kash Patel saying, quote, "We are built to detect, respond to, and bring to justice those who threaten the lives of American citizens, particularly during large gatherings like the historic UFC 250 fight." That's exactly what we did here. Over 4,300 people were in attendance for UFC 250, which included 1,200 service members. Luckily, nobody was harmed during the FBI's takedown. The event went off without a hitch. Much more on this in the coming minutes, hours, days, and of course.
So the event still went on, but under the shadow of what authorities say was a multi-phase terror plan. Gunter Eagleman zeroes in on who the crowd really was. Trump supporters and America 250 patriots packed around the White House. FBI thwarts major terror plot targeting Trump supporters at White House. Explosive-laden drones, pre-staged snipers aimed at 80,000 Trump fans and UFC crowd on the ellipse during the celebration. Create chaos, force deadly evacuation, maximize casualties. Thank God Director Patel caught this on signal chats before it happened. This was no lone wolf. It was a well-planned attack on the president's supporters. Here's more. Jonathan Turley calls it a cautionary tale.
Right now, the White House would not have been the target. It would have been the supporters of the president. White House has extremely great drone technology. Sometimes you'll see some of the agents with these, what looks like heavy guns, but they're to essentially jam the signal of these drones. And with them saying in the documents that the FBI is releasing to our newsroom that they have a station team, which is essentially have crowds of people rush toward an area and then those snipers hit them. That tells you those were the target of Trump supporters, the UFC crowd, that fan fest that was outside of the White House.
It drew about
Incredible.
80,000 people. So a lot at stake here. Thank the good Lord the FBI was able to thwart this before the event happened. We're learning about it, obviously, after the fact so that people who attended wouldn't be scared. But they uncovered this on signal chats, multiple people allegedly discussing this attack at the UFC event. The investigation stretched across at least 12 FBI field offices. The goal was to target capitalist elites, billionaires, politicians who received donations from the American Israel Public Affairs Committee.
Yeah, and good on Director Patel. The point you made there, Ainsley, about this stretching across 12 FBI field offices means they're one team working together. Mm-hmm. But it is a sobering morning we are waking up to this because we have not seen, but yet long feared, to your point, Lawrence, that there would be explosive-laden drones tried to use in an attack. This alleged plot was going to create this mass chaos evacuation of those 80,000 people, and they had enough people involved that this was going to be a very deadly incident. Where have we seen explosive-laden drones? In places like Ukraine, on the battlefield. The fact that it could possibly come here makes a strong case for the president and for any law enforcement official to say that we need to up this drone deterrence technology, and we need to do it fast.
Now, when I was at the White House just this past weekend, I was at the Hotel Washington at the UFC lounge on the top floor, where you could easily overlook the entire venue. You could overlook the White House, the claw, the ellipse, and if you were following me on social media, you probably saw some of the videos that I was posting that were showing what looked like security, clearly security on top of, I believe it was the Treasury building, and they were launching drones themselves, clearly in surveillance capacity. But it's terrifying to consider what could have happened and which buildings that they would have targeted to cause these mass evacuations and all this chaos. Thankfully, this did not happen. So the target, not necessarily Octagon, it was the people and the symbolism around it, even Elon Musk reacting, saying this is crazy. So when even Elon Musk is saying it's crazy, you know the story's broken wide open. Next comes one of the names at the center of it, Ohio suspect Tyson Proper, now under arrest, allegedly plotting the terror attack. Investigators see plan to use explosive-laden drones against nearby buildings and multiple suspects. So here is one of the mugshots. So we move from the big national headline to the individual face in custody. Trump Daily Post shifts to another alleged organizer out of California. Affidavit says rifles and ammo were recovered. California man busted as alleged organizer of UFC White House terror plot, spawning leftist and doomer conspiracies about elites eating kids and Epstein ties. Rifles and ammo recovered, more terrorists created by leftist and doomer rhetoric. I think we have the imagery here. Okay, yes. This is some of the imagery from the signal chats that has now been released. Let me see if I can make it a little bit larger for you here. You can see position your teams in the purple dots, counter, sniper, and drones, long range, circled area, easy way out. I mean, they had it mapped out and ready to go. The evacuation routes where they would get picked up. They have some signal chat handles, read the docs for mission briefing, sniper positions. Unbelievable. Here's some of the visuals of what was recovered. The Knox County Sheriff's Office took photos of the equipment acquired by Proper, which included several boxes of ammunition, estimated by law enforcement to be in the thousands of rounds, 2 plate carriers with AR-style magazines, AR-style rifle, and a bullpup rifle painted with an American flag. So you can see some of the hardware that these guys were ready to deploy. The equipment was turned over voluntarily by the family to law enforcement. So the California arrest raises the obvious question, how did investigators crack this network in the first place? Bill Maloogian has the key detail. First alarm reportedly came from Proper's own mother. Feds say Proper's mother made the initial call to police when she became concerned about his activities when the wider web plot was uncovered. On or about June 10th at approximately 9:18 p.m., officers with the Knox County Sheriff's Office and Danville Police were dispatched to an address in Knox County in reference to a disturbance. The caller, identified as Proper's mother, was concerned about her son, identified as Proper due to his recent conduct, including firearms purchases and communicating with certain individuals online. Officers arrived at the scene 9:38, spoke to Proper and his mother and father. Proper's a 19-year-old male, lives at the residence with his parents. Proper's father said that Proper had recently met random people online and had been planning recons with these individuals. His father said Proper had been planning to leave this upcoming weekend, the weekend of June 13th, 2026, to meet up with those individuals online. His father further stated that Proper had also recently acquired camping gear, food, ballistic plates, a new shotgun, a rifle, lots of ammunition, extra magazines, and plate carriers. So that is from the charging documents, it appears. So the Kash Patel did post on X that the law enforcement partners became aware of the threat on June 10th. Wow. The threat to the UFC America 250 event in Washington involving individuals outside the national campaign capital region. Thanks to rapid action of the FBI and DOJ, multi-state operation, multiple individuals are now in custody. President Trump was asked about it at the G7.
Briefed on the attack plans for the UFC event at the White House. The FBI thwarted an attack.
I haven't heard about it, no. But I watched, the attack that I watched were the fighters. And he saw it too, by the way. He was sitting back home in his beautiful palace and he was watching it. And they were as good a fights as I've ever seen. Right?
The best fight.
The best. They were. That last fight was brutal. Wow. And the two last, all of the fights were good.
The two fights.
It was all good. It was a great evening. It was very different for the White House, but I wish you could have been there. We built an incredible arena.
Wow. So President Trump weighing in that he was not briefed. Patel says the attacks were stopped cold, and that's the law enforcement side of it. Pulse Millennial takes us into the motive with investigators talking about the so-called capitalist elites and APAC-linked politicians.
It's still under investigation, but one suspect allegedly told investigators that the goal was to target capitalist elites, billionaires, or politicians who received donations from the American Israel Public Affairs Committee.
So motive has now entered the picture. The political fight starts fast. Doherty closes the loop with court images and chat screenshots and the mother who helped blow the thing wide open.
The first image, I believe, that we're going to show is a rifle that belonged to her son, according to authorities. The other is a screen grab, several screen grabs showing aerial images and maps of the Washington, D.C. area and discussing where snipers possibly would be related to the White House. This is all evidence that is posted on an official court docket right now, an official government document. But I will say 19-year-old Tyson Proper's mother called police after she was concerned about his purchases and communications with people online. It then led them to conversations that he allegedly had with someone named Brian Roa and Michael Thomas in Southern California. They appeared yesterday before a federal judge. We're also told that there is a suspect in Nebraska and one in Missouri as well. So what we're being told here, Kaylee, and everyone on the couch, is that this alleged plot consisted of a plan to have drones that were actually armed with some type of firepower go and attack buildings around the White House. And once people left, they were going to have snipers nearby attacking some of the people leaving. This was a serious plot. The FBI, the Secret Service investigating this right now. And as you heard the deputy director of the Secret Service right there say that they believe there are more people out there. Right now, though, 5 people facing these charges. And it's incredible to go through these documents and see what happened. But it appears that it was this 19-year-old's mother in Ohio who really spilled the beans on this entire case by letting people know that she had some concerns about her son, Kaylee.
Thank goodness that mom did that. And that 19-year-old is the one I mentioned who was alleged to use his graduation money to purchase these weapons. Wow, David, thank you for this update.
Thanks, Kaylee.
Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. The mother turning in her own son. That's where we are right now. So what does it all really mean? It means America 250 has graduated in something much larger than a celebration. First came restoration projects and cultural events and mass participation. Now security significance. That's the arc. The Trump administration wanted this anniversary to feel proud and visible and unmistakably American. Mission accomplished. And with that success comes attention from supporters, from the press, from political enemies, and of course from violent actors who wanted to shatter the moment through fear. UFC branding wasn't just the wrapper. The true target was symbolism, the White House, the crowd, the patriotic energy, and the sense that America under Trump is confident again. When federal authorities mobilize across states to defend an event like that, it tells you America 250 has become a national symbol in real time. So thank God for the agents, the local officers, and federal partners who move fast. Thank God a mother spoke up, and thank God this alleged nightmare was stopped before innocent Americans, Trump supporters, families, fighters, staff, and guests were caught in the engineered chaos. But let's be honest, the next fight starts now. Not just over security, but over the culture that keeps demonizing patriotic Americans, inflaming class hatred, and acting shock when unstable people turn rhetoric into operational plans. The left can dismiss that all it wants. Normal Americans see the pattern. The Trump administration is proving that America 250 is not some empty slogan. It's becoming a living national project big enough to inspire pride, participation, and now the full attention of law enforcement. If you believe that President Trump was right to make America 250 bold, visible, and unapologetically patriotic, share this report. Subscribe and sound off below. Yes or no? Should America 250 events now receive full enhanced federal security from this point forward? I want to hear from you. But I also want to make sure that you get the news that you depend on. Thousands of patriots have already done so. They've already texted the words raw feed to 844-840-4963. They're getting the news. when YouTube decides to not share us in the algorithm or not send you notifications. So make sure you do that and stay plugged in with us here. But since we're talking about America 250, yes, it's a scary event that these people want to attack, but it's also time to celebrate. Make sure you find some gear from the Next News merch shelf below this video or go to shop.nextnewsnetwork.com. Terrifying. Absolutely crazy that these guys were caught. Thank God they were caught. What are you guys saying in the chat? Oh, wow. When I saw the news this morning, I couldn't believe what I was reading. But, I'm not shocked. Personally, I'm not shocked. I knew that it was going to be a target. That somebody somewhere was going to try to do something stupid. And there are many more events planned, so hopefully those events receive extremely elevated security. When I was there, security was tight, just to get on the ellipse. Even just to get in and around the hotels was difficult. Roads blocked off. I mean, the security was intense. And speaking of intense, we need to talk about what's going on with Gavin Newsom, because he is freaking out right now. Tonight, the biggest story out of California is not just that Gavin Newsom is publicly melting down over DOJ investigations swirling around his orbit. It's that the entire argument that Democrats mock for years is now boomerang right back into their lap. Suddenly, the same crowd that cheered every probe, every leak, every fishing expedition against President Trump is using words like abuse of power, politically motivated, and weaponization. Why? Because this time the spotlight is pointed at one of their own, and one reported detail changes everything. What if part of this story didn't even start under President Trump? And that's why this matters far beyond Sacramento. According to reporting cited by Mary Margaret Olahan, there are multiple DOJ investigations related to Gavin Newsom's circle, though not directly into Newsom himself. And one source says that one inquiry involving his wife is tied to taxes, while another probe involving Newsom's chief of staff actually began under the former Biden DOJ and remains open and evolving. Let me say that again. The same political machine now screaming that President Trump is weaponizing justice may be reacting to an investigative trail that predates the Trump administration entirely. You see, that flips the script. Newsom jumped in front of the cameras, claiming federal agents were knocking on doors, demanding records, and trying to find a crime. Then his office filed a FOIA demanding that they seek DOJ communications mentioning him and Jennifer Seibel Newsom. The left instantly closed ranks. Tim Walz called it a BS investigation. J.B. Pritzker cried weaponization. Kamala Harris piled on. But the real fight here is not guilt or innocence, it's legitimacy. And Democrats know they're losing control of that argument. And while we're talking about institutions people no longer blindly trust, here's something I do trust when I see real results. Now, you've probably seen the clip, Joe Rogan sitting with Mel Gibson talking about people close to him who went through serious health struggles and then saw dramatic turnarounds. Rogan brings up red light-based therapies and how they impact the body at a cellular level. Gibson says it's straight, this stuff works, and that got my attention. In my own life, I watched something very similar with my wife, who dealt with constant discomfort and anxiety for far too long. That's why I looked into red light therapy and its work. See, Jonathan Otto is spotlighting it. He's been on this channel multiple times, and you can check out the interviews. They're remarkable. But if you want to learn more, go to myredlight.com. See, it's one of those tools that people are turning to because they're tired of being told to ignore what they can plainly see with their own eyes. Use NNN25 for individual items or NNN30 for bundles. Now back to the California meltdown, because the more Democrats talk, the more they prove the point. See, here's the twist. They do not want you focusing on. Newsom did not just deny wrongdoing, he instantly moved the story into 2028 presidential politics by saying President Trump is targeting him because he's considering a run for the White House. That's the tell. The moment he said that, every subpoena, every records request, every whistleblower claim stopped being debated as law enforcement and started being sold as election interference. That's exactly why the language from Newsom, Walz, Pritzker, Harris, and Padilla suddenly sounds so familiar to conservatives. California is escalating. Absolute chaos unfolding right now as secret DOJ record demands come to light. The whistleblowers have officially stepped forward and the inner circle is compromised. Listen.
Right now out of California, Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom claims that President Trump and the DOJ are, quote, coming after him and those around him by trying to find a crime, his words, that does not exist, and what Newsom calls an attempt to intimidate him. Here we go. Listen.
Donald Trump isn't just coming after me because of my mean tweets. He's coming after me because I'm considering running for president, because he hates that I've consistently called him out over and over again for his lies and deceit. Donald Trump is simply the most corrupt president in American history. He's turned the levers of government into his own personal power ministries to reward cronies and to try to jail his opponents. So let me say it again. Mr. President, come after me. I'm not going anywhere, and the country is watching.
Okay, so that is fresh sound from California just about an hour ago now. No comment to Fox from the DOJ as of this hour. A source there saying that there are several investigations into people around Newsom, including his wife and his former chief of staff, and they originate from whistleblowers. Fox News asking for clarity out of Newsom's office around what he means when he says the DOJ is demanding records. That has not been defined. We'll update you as soon as we get more word on that.
So Newsom claims the DOJ is trying to find a crime that doesn't exist. Now watch the full public meltdown where he says Trump is targeting not just him but his wife in his 2028 plans. Gavin Newsom, MJ Truth Ultra, almost in tears, announces he and his wife are now under investigation. Here are his full remarks.
In recent days, federal agents have knocked on the doors of family, friends, and former employees. Not because they found a crime, because they're simply trying to find one. They're demanding records. They're abusing the grand jury process, digging through years and years of random documents. Donald Trump isn't just coming after me because of my mean tweets. He's coming after me because I'm considering running for president, because he hates that I've consistently called him out over and over again for his lies and deceit. Donald Trump is simply the most corrupt president in American history. He's turned the levers of government into his own personal power ministries to reward cronies and to try to jail his opponents. His personal attorney now runs the Department of Justice, which has repeatedly gone after his political enemies. Ask Jerome Powell. Sent them after James Comey, Trish James, Adam Schiff. He sent them after Tim Walz, and a woman that a jury found Donald Trump had sexually abused. One by one, anyone who has challenged Donald Trump has ended up on his hit list. And today, I proudly join that list. After calling for my arrest last year, Donald Trump directed his Department of Justice to investigate me. And just in the last week, I've learned that his campaign has reached my own home. To get me, he's coming after my wife, Jen, a public servant, a woman who's dedicated her life to supporting women and girls. Someone who has done nothing wrong other than having the temerity to advocate for what she believes in. If they can't intimidate me, they'll go after the mother of our children. Donald Trump picked the wrong target. We have nothing to hide. His political operatives can take every record and read every page, but they'll be looking in the wrong place. Because if they really want to find corruption, look no further than 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Donald Trump is selling the presidency. He's running the largest cash heist in American political history, trading foreign tariff relief for approval of his golf courses, day trading behind the Resolute desk, reaping hundreds of millions of dollars in personal profit. And he's doing it openly. He's doing it on camera. He did it last night on the White House lawn. He's doing it through cryptocurrencies. He's doing it through the receipt of a $400 million private jet from a foreign government that he plans to keep when he leaves office. through his son's ventures in countries where his own administration is simultaneously making policy. His personal fortune has skyrocketed by $4 billion since making his return to office. This is the behavior of a regime, not a republic. The White House has become a marketplace for sneakers and coins and watches, cologne, guitars, Bibles, and phones. Influence for sale, access for sale. And today, my family and I can personally confirm that justice is for sale. To Donald Trump, who I know is watching because...
All right, enough of that guy. It's Newsom trying to turn an investigation into a campaign speech. Next, the Focus Titans reports say there are multiple DOJ probes around his inner circle. Trump Daily Post, DOJ has multiple investigations targeting Newsom and his wife. No wonder he's panicking. His house of cards is collapsing. 2028 dreams are done. Expose the snake. So the questions keep circling around the people closest to Newsom. Now he jumps online, doubles down, calling it a presidential hit job. Today, my wife and I joined Donald Trump's hit list. He's directed his Department of Justice to investigate us. They have not found a crime. They're simply trying to find one. He isn't coming after me because of mean tweets, but because I'm considering a run for president. He hates it. I constantly call him out. We have nothing to hide. Come after me. The country is watching. So he wants this framed as retaliation, not accountability. Tim Walz joins in the same playbook, calling the DOJ a tool against political opponents. As you know, Tim Walz has now received a DOJ referral for his crimes in Minnesota. The Justice Department is not a tool for the president to investigate his political opponents. Welcome to the BS Investigations Club, Governor Newsom. You're in good company. So Walz using the language Republicans were mocked for using for years. Now here comes J.B. Pritzker taking it further, accusing the DOJ of being weaponized. This attack on Governor Newsom represents a dangerous escalation by Trump. The president frequently calls for the jailing of his perceived enemies, but his playbook of weaponizing the Department of Justice as a personal attack dog is another level of corruption. This must stop. So Pritzker's outburst shows how fast Democrats are rallying around the weaponization argument. Next comes the blunt response. Spare us the tears after what they tried to do to Trump. Oh, boo-hoo, Newsom. Y'all were about to throw Trump in prison for 96 years and we're supposed to feel sorry for you? Yeah, right. That's the backlash. Now the story turns to the money, the allegations that Jennifer Newsom's nonprofit funneled millions through salary and a production company. DOJ is investigating Newsom and his wife, Jennifer. She funneled nearly $4 million to herself from her nonprofit funded by Newsom's donors. They write here that Newsom's nonprofit, the Representation Project, is funded in large part by Newsom's political donors. Jennifer Newsom has taken $1.8 million in salary. She sent $2.1 million more to her production company, Girls Club Entertainment, funneled from the nonprofit. Textbook money laundering, they call it. So the sympathy pitch starts falling apart once the cash trail enters the picture. Next, a new report adds key wrinkle. Multiple DOJ investigations are underway, but not all of them directly targeting Gavin himself. Daily Wire has learned that there are multiple DOJ investigations going on related to Gavin Newsom, though none of them directly related. One investigation, which began in 2025, is related to his wife and her taxes. A source familiar shared a separate DOJ investigation which began under the Biden DOJ, involved Newsom's chief of staff. That investigation, which is still open and evolving, involves multiple Newsom's staff. And now Newsom's office tries to go on offense, demanding DOJ records and calling the probe baseless fishing expedition. My office is demanding the Trump administration release any and all records on the DOJ's politically motivated baseless fishing expedition. The American people deserve to know who ordered this abuse of power and how far it goes. Here's his official letter from the office of the governor. So after the FOIA move, Newsom's team is clearly trying to win the legitimacy fight before the facts are settled. Next, Kamala Harris jumps in and says this is exactly what she predicted Trump would do with the DOJ. Kamala Harris has crawled out of her cave.
And then there's all these sort of legal fights as well. I have one more News a Day question, then I'll let you off the hook. Last time that we talked on camera was February 2024, and I watched that interview again, and you predicted at the time, you said that if President Trump is reelected, he will use the Department of Justice to go after his political opponents.
Yeah.
Governor Newsom in California says that's happening to him now and his wife. For people that may not know, the governor says that that the Trump administration, the DOJ, is investigating him, especially his wife. Governor Walz, and your running mate, says that there's a BS investigation. We don't know that much about it yet, but what do you think? Do you think that's a BS investigation?
I predicted just about everything that has happened with this administration.
And you say I told you so?
I don't say I told you so. That's kind of obnoxious. I don't say that. But the reality is many of us predicted. And it didn't require much creative thought because he told us most of what we knew would happen, including that he would go after his political enemies using the Department of Justice. I am not surprised that he may be using the Department of Justice to go after a political enemy in the current governor of California. And this is why I do believe this, upon many other examples of what is essentially, you're going to ask me questions about the current president, I'm going to be candid, what is essentially the most callous, corrupt, and incompetent presidential administration America's ever experienced.
No, I'm sorry, we just experienced one in your administration. So she's pushing the same retaliation line, but here's what gets awkward. Senator Padilla cries weaponization too until he's confronted with a report that this investigation began under Biden's DOJ. Lindell TV and Allison in the Know asking Padilla about Newsom being under investigation.
Padilla, what's your response to Gavin Newsom now being under investigation by the Trump administration?
It's just just the next person in a long line of the Trump administration weaponizing the Department of Justice to go after his perceived political enemies.
But this was done under the Biden administration.
Doing enough about this?
California News is not covering that. The investigation into Gavin Newsom started under Biden, but California media is not reporting that. Why do you think that is?
So this is the climax of the anti-weaponization story America's been living through for a decade. Republicans spent years warning that institutions could be bent into political tools through leaks, special counsel, selective prosecutions, and endless media-fed narratives. Democrats rolled their eyes when it was President Trump in the crosshairs, but now that Gavin Newsom says investigations are circling his wife, staff, and allies, the left has adopted the very same vocabulary word for word. That's the real headline. Not just new scum, not just California. The argument has come full circle from this point on. Every major investigation of a powerful politician will be judged by one question first. Is this accountability or is this retaliation? Whoever wins that public argument wins much more than one case. So let's keep this simple. If an investigation that reportedly reaches back into the previous administration is now being used by Democrats as proof of Trumpian weaponization, then what we are really watching is panic mixed with narrative warfare. Newsom wants sympathy. His allies want a shield. Corporate media want a villain. But the American people have become a lot harder to fool after years of lawfare, selective outrage, and double standards aimed at President Trump and the America First movement. If there's nothing there, facts will settle it. If there's something there, accountability should not stop because the name happens to be Gavin Newsom. That's the standard conservatives demanded when Trump was targeted, and it's the standard that should apply now. So share this report everywhere. Subscribe if you're sick of the spin, and drop your answer below. Yes or no, do Democrats suddenly believe in anti-weaponization only because one of their own may be under scrutiny? Let's have a conversation, and let's keep you connected with the Next News Network. When the algorithm decides otherwise, we'll send you the notifications that YouTube won't when you text raw feed to 844-840-4963. Thousands and thousands of patriots are already getting the inside scoop direct from me every night. And make sure you're celebrating America 250 with the Next News Network by going to the merch shelf below this video or simply going to shop.nextnewsnetwork.com. All right, moving right along, more news ahead. Gavin Newsom. What do you know, right? Oh, this will be fun to watch, won't it be? Don't you think? Oh, yes, it certainly will. All right, we're going to get these scheduled for you, get them published on X as well as on YouTube. So make sure you're following us on all platforms so you can be the first to know. Now we got to talk about what's going on in Iran, because this is the big story. Vance making a lot of statements, President Trump at the G7, oil prices, a lot going on here in this report, so strap in. Hold on, because the real bombshell right now is not just that President Trump locked in a deal that blocks Iran from getting a nuclear weapon, is that the Trump administration appears to be building something much bigger right in front of us. A new Middle East economic order built on shipping security, Gulf cooperation, and investment instead of endless American blood and treasure. Oil is dropping. The Strait of Hormuz is reopening. Regional money is moving. The same media that spent years cheering chaos is now parroting foreign propaganda because they can't stand to admit Trump may have just changed the game again. You see, Vice President JD Vance laid it out plain. From day one, President Trump's position was non-negotiable. Iran will never have a nuclear weapon. That's the entry ticket. But that's not the end point. The bigger play is what comes after. Vance says the Strait of Hormuz is open immediately, and markets are already responding with lower oil and gas prices. Senator Rand Paul backing the peace push because Americans have paid the cost of this conflict at the pump, the grocery store, and on the farm through fertilizer prices. And here's where the story gets even bigger. The administration's openly talking about a future where if Iran behaves like a normal country, Gulf Arab states, not American taxpayers, could invest in the region and help transform it. That means the Trump administration is trying to turn a military and diplomatic win into an economic architecture. Not forever war, not blank checks, America first, peace through prosperity. And speaking of solutions that people used to mock until the results became too obvious to ignore, this next message hits close to home. Now, you've probably seen the clip, Joe Rogan with Mel Gibson talking about people close to them facing serious health struggles and how red light-based therapies help spark dramatic turnarounds. Rogan talks about what happens at the cellular level. Gibson says it plainly, this stuff works, and that got my attention. In my own life, I watched something similar with my wife, who dealt with constant discomfort and anxiety for far too long. Then we discovered red light therapy, and it changed our perspective fast. And that's why I want you to check out Jonathan Otto's work right here on this channel. I've interviewed him countless times. Absolutely eye-opening interviews. But you can skip right to the end by going to myredlight.com. That's, if you've been curious, you really need to learn more. Go to myredlight.com. Use NNN25 for individual items or NNN30 for bundles. Take a serious look for your family today, just like we did. Now back to the story, because what Team Trump is doing in the Middle East is all about results over noise. Now here's the part that the corporate press really does not want viewers to focus on. This deal is being sold less as a one-off diplomatic document and more as the launch pad for an investment zone. Vance made that clear when he said not a single dime comes from the United States, and that any upside for Iran depends entirely on acting like a normal country. Then came another clue. Qatar preparing to invest more than $1 trillion into the United States. That's not random. That's the prosperity phase. And the tweets, they're going to help map out exactly how it's all unfolding. Here's JD Vance laying it out. The president has been clear from day one.
President Vance here to talk a little bit about what is in the Iran deal, the great peace deal that the President of the United States made last night. Number one, what this deal means is that the Straits of Hormuz are open immediately. You're already seeing oil and gas prices come down just over the past 24 hours. Number two, it ensures that Iran will never have a nuclear weapon. And we have to back up for a second and appreciate that what the president has done is completely decimated Iran's nuclear program. Now, this deal really has two pathways. On the one hand, if the Iranians make the long-term commitments never to rebuild, then they're going to be welcomed into the world economy. If, on the other hand, they try to rebuild that nuclear program, they're never going to have the resources in order to do so. So it's a win-win for the American people. We ensure Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon either way. And now it's really up to the Iranians. Over the next few months, we're going to see if they're serious about dismantling that program for the long term. If they do, the president has said, we want their country to be successful. But what we know is that our country is successful thanks to great presidential leadership and a lot of good decisions. Thank you, guys.
That's the message directly from the White House, laying out the core deal. Iran's nuclear program gets crushed. America gets lower energy costs. Now he goes a step further, explaining how the economic upside for Iran comes from Gulf Arab investments, not U.S. taxpayers.
What we have said is, again, that if the Iranians are behaving like a normal country and if they make their country investable, then the Gulf Arab states are going to may decide to invest in that country, invest in their infrastructure, invest in their incredible resources. But I think it's important, not a single dime of that money comes from the United States. And in order for Iran to get that benefit, they have to show the Gulf Arab states that they're behaving like a normal country. Again, the whole concept of this deal is that if Iran acts like a normal country, their economic relationship, both with the region, but the world, is going to be totally transformed. The president of the United States doesn't want just a deal on the nuclear as much as that's a win for the American people. Yeah. He wants to see a transformed Middle East, which is what this deal will do so long as the Iranians comply. And if they don't, they won't get any of the benefits.
So, no American bailout, no free ride, only benefits if Tehran acts like a normal country. Next, he takes aim at the corporate press for pushing Iran regime propaganda instead of the actual terms.
Really bothers me and frustrates me and is unexpected when the American media literally picks up talking points and propaganda from the RIGC that has no support in the text of the agreement that we've actually negotiated and no basis in reality. This is good for the American people. The Iranians don't get a dime unless they behave and change their behavior. And this means that Iran will never have a nuclear weapon, Sean.
That's why we did this. You say they don't get a dime. Do they ever get an American dime, a taxpayer dollar?
No. So number one, first of all, they never get a dime of American taxpayer money, ever. Full stop. Not even close. Okay. What we have said is there's a lot of economic benefit in the United States relieving a lot of sanctions and welcoming them back into the world economy. There's a lot of benefit there. Not American money, but there's a lot of economic prosperity that can flow from that. What the president said to them is, we want you to be a successful country. But for you to be a successful country, you've got to give up on this threat. You've got to give up on this desire to have a nuclear weapon. And if you do that, the United States is willing to have a much better relationship.
So he calls out the media's lie machine. Iran doesn't get a dime from U.S. taxpayers. And while the press points, Trump points to something voters can actually feel: oil falling fast and gas prices heading down. Here he is at the G7.
Goes fuel, so goes everything. Fuel is dropping. It's now in the 70s per barrel. And I think we'll get it down. When I say I was in Iowa, and we had great victories in Iowa. And when I left, I noticed in a gas station, $1.85 a gallon. That's where we were. It's a little bit higher generally, but I saw two stations, $1.85, one had $1.91. And, you know, we're going to get around those levels. So very honored.
So Trump tying peace through strength to cheaper fuel, saying oil is back in the 70s and gas could keep dropping next to market data, backs him up with crude sliding below $79 a barrel. U.S. oil prices dropped below $79 a barrel, hit the lowest level since March 10th. Look at this. Look at this drop. Exactly as President Trump said would happen. So it's not just talk. The chart shows oil breaking lower in real time. Shifting gears, Trump then turns to Israel and delivers a blunt warning about civilian deaths in the Hezbollah fight. Shots fired, they write. President Trump dunking on Israel for committing war crimes against civilians.
What are the expectations for Israel? Can this deal survive if Israel attacks Lebanon?
It can, and you know, I consider that the minor war. The Iran's a big one, but we have that a little pinprick out there that constantly rears its head, and that's Hezbollah. And you know, I was very responsible for Syria, and the man that's running Syria now is a person that I put there along with President Erdogan and some others. He's done an amazing job of pulling it together. He's not a Boy Scout, but he's done an amazing job of pulling it together. And he is very good with Hezbollah, does not like them. And I'll tell you what, Israel's fighting Hezbollah too long, and too many people are being killed. And you don't have to knock down an apartment house every time you're looking for somebody, because there are a lot of people in those apartment houses, and they're not all Hezbollah, that I can tell you. And I suggested to Israel to let Syria take care of Hezbollah. Because to be honest with you, I think they do a better job of doing it.
So after the oil drop, the focus moves back to the battlefield. Trump's not mincing words with Israel. Next, more of that rebuke. He says Syria could handle Hezbollah better than endless apartment block strikes.
Fighting Hezbollah too long, and too many people are being killed. And you don't have to knock down an apartment house every time you're looking for somebody, because there are a lot of people in those apartment houses, and they're not all Hezbollah, that I can tell you. And I suggested to Israel to let Syria take care of Hezbollah. Because to be honest with you, I think they do a better job of doing it. And I didn't like Syria. I didn't like where 2 hours before we're signing the agreement that there was an attack in Lebanon, in Beirut. It was right in, it wasn't like in the southern side, and it was in Beirut. I did not like that. I let them know that. I didn't like it, not at all. But I think that Syria, he's pulled that country together amazingly quickly. He's very capable. And he's been very good for me. He's protected everything that I've asked for, he's done. And if Israel can't do the job without killing everyone else, he'll do the job. Syria will do the job.
So Trump making clear the support for Israel is not a blank check for bad strategy or civilian carnage, but he also reminds the world who Israel's strongest backer really is, and says no president has done more than he has.
Relationship. Without us, without the United States, there would be no Israel. Without me, there would be no Israel, because no other president was willing to do what I did. I've had a great relationship with Bibi, but now Bibi has to.
So, even while dressing down Netanyahu, Trump is underscoring American leverage and his own record with Israel. Next, he brings it back to the bottom line on Iran with a crystal clear warning: no nukes or hell rains down.
The one thing that's happening that's of note, frankly, the only thing that really matters to me, is Iran will never have a nuclear weapon. And it says it loud and clear. They're not going to develop it, they're not going to buy it, they're not going to do anything with it. And if they do, they suffer unbelievable consequences. Not just a little bit like, I won't even tell you the consequences, but the consequences are the ultimate consequences. And with that being said, I hope we have a very good relationship. But the biggest thing is they will not have a nuclear weapon. And that's the reason I got in, and that's the reason I agreed to sign. And we originally had, Marco was with me, and they originally wrote that we will not develop a nuclear weapon. I said, no, you're not going to develop it, you're not going to buy either. So we have, that took another couple of days of time. Everything was, it's ridiculous, but so we have, they will not develop, purchase, buy, or any other thing. They're not going to acquire a nuclear weapon. If they do, all hell will rain down on them. And they're not going to do that, Now, you talk about regime change. I never cared about regime change. It's never a part, but I guess you have regime change, because you know better than anybody. The first group, they're all dead. The second group, they're dead. A part of the third group is gone. And we're dealing with people that I think are very rational people. I mean, they were nice to deal with. They were strong people, smart people. I think actually they're smarter than the first and second group. But they're not radicalized, and they're, looking to help their country. So, again, I don't believe the regime change. I've watched regime changes for years. They never work. It has to just happen. I can tell you this is a country where the Emir is so respected, and the Prime Minister is so respected by the people, and that's the way a country should run. It should run out of respect, not of fear. As you know, at least 42,000 protesters were killed in Iran. They were protesting. The wrestler, they had the big event at the White House the other day, the UFC, and they were all talking about he was a great fighter. And he was hung with his two friends because he spoke something about their regime. It's tough stuff. So
Trump slamming the door on any Iranian path to the bomb spelled out the consequences. Now watch, the hardline is pairing with big money as Qatar is set to pour more than $1 trillion into the U.S.
Critical time, but I think you took the right decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Qatar is going to be investing much more than $1 trillion in the United States. We have over 18. It's going to be 19.4 or so when it figures out. But you know, we set a record. There's never been anything like it. No country in history has had that kind of investment. We'll be having almost 19.2 trillion dollars invested in the United States. The record was 10 years ago from another country when it was hot. But we have the hottest country in the world right now. But Qatar's been a great investor. We really rekindled ourselves when I met with you last year, a year ago, probably 13, 14 months. That was a good trip. And
it was May,
so
last May, I think.
Yeah,
I mean, a year, yeah.
That was a great trip, and we established. We've been friends for a long time. We've known each other for a long time. But Qatar is investing tremendous amounts of money in our country, and we appreciate that.
So while the media swore the Middle East was turning on Trump, he's announcing massive Qatari investment and bragging about factories coming back next. Vance explains the bigger play Gulf Arab partners aligning with the U.S. like never before.
I think what is most interesting about the last year and a half, the underreported part of the Trump administration's policy in the Middle East, is that all of these Gulf Arab coalition partners are coming together with the United States. Israel is obviously very involved, and they're actually pushing back together. You see the United States working with our Gulf Arab partners in a way you've never seen before in the history of this country. And I think that's one of the reasons why we've gotten to the point where we have a very good peace deal that's on the table that we're ready to sign, is because you see for the first time the Gulf Coast countries pushing back against Iran, uniting under the president's leadership, and actually doing something different for a change.
So the investment pitch wasn't happening in a vacuum. It fits the new regional bloc Vance says Trump has built against Iran. Now Rand Paul, who's no rubber stamp, backs the peace push and tells naysayers to stand down.
Senator, what you do know from what we all know right now, are you happy about the deal?
You know, I think the sooner the war's over, the better. The better for the American consumer, the better for the American farmer with fertilizer prices. So I'm in favor of Trump's peace negotiations. And really the initial that we're hearing is that the trade is that we will discontinue our blockade and that the Iranians will allow ships to go through the strait. So I think opening the strait is a great beginning. I'm hopeful that in the second phase of this, that they will agree to exit the enriched uranium from the country, and I think that could be done in exchange for normalizing trade with Iran and the rest of the world, and I think that's worth the trade. If they're willing to export that enriched uranium and no longer enriched uranium, by all means you need to offer something, and that offer should be normalization of trade and removal of sanctions.
Their record on keeping deals is horrendous. If they don't keep to the letter of this deal, whatever it turns out to be, do we still have to hold on to that military option?
Well, you know, one of the trades is very easy to verify, and that's the removal of the enriched uranium. So really, if the deal is you remove the enriched uranium to another country and then we release the sanctions, that's completely verifiable. They've seen the military option. So the military option, while I'm not a big fan of war, has probably changed their perspective with regard to diplomacy. So I think they actually can get the deal of having the enriched uranium exported from the country. And it's very easy to verify because we will probably have to help them dig it out. It's under, as the president said, a mountain of granite. But I commend the president for pursuing these peace negotiations, and the naysayers need to actually see what's going on before they ruin the negotiations.
I think that would be smart of them to do so. They've defied what is smart, though, in the past.
So after Vance and Rand Paul made the case for peace through strength, the other side is finally admitting reality. Next, Iran's foreign minister says the war with the United States is over. Iranian Foreign Minister Araghchi says war with the United States is over. So what does this really mean? It means that President Trump is trying to convert hard power into durable order. First, crush Iran's path to a bomb. Second, reopen global shipping lanes. Third, bring Gulf partners together under American leadership. Fourth, redirect the conversation away from missiles and towards capital, trade, and infrastructure. And that's why Vance is hammering the text of the agreement and torching media outlets for repeated regime propaganda. The battlefield has changed. The left wants Americans staring only at the old war model. Trump's presenting a new one. No U.S. taxpayer handouts. No Iranian nukes. No surrender. In a Middle East where compliance opens the door to prosperity, while defiance brings crushing consequences. And that is why this matters so much. President Trump is not just ending a dangerous chapter with strength, he's trying to write the next chapter on America's terms. Lower oil, open sea lanes, no nuclear Iran, Gulf partners stepping up, massive investment flowing into the United States. At the same time, Trump is showing every player in the region, including Israel, that America leads from principle and power, not blind obedience and not endless war. That's what real leadership looks like. The media can sneer, Democrats can panic, and the foreign policy establishment can melt down all at once. But results are results, and the American people can see them. If you think peace through strength and prosperity beats forever wars and taxpayer giveaways, share this report right now. Subscribe to the channel and drop your answer. Do you support President Trump's plan to use economic power, not American cash, to reshape the Middle East? Yes or no? Let's have a conversation. And I want to make sure you get the news that you depend on right here from the Next News Network. Thousands of patriots have already texted the words raw feed to 844-840-4963. They're getting the notifications that YouTube never sends directly from me. I want to make sure you stay on the inside track. And I also want to make sure you're celebrating all of these wins. Are you tired of winning yet? Well, we have a big win here as America 250 becomes ever closer. Make sure you go to the merch shelf below this video or simply go to shop.nextnewsnetwork.com. Wow. So we'll see how that all plays out. Hopefully Iran will play by the rules and not have to meet more cruise missiles. It's all about the verification process, my friends. That's what it comes down to. Okay, so we got to talk about these big arrests that happen. Massive Antifa arrests occurred today. And so we've got that. Also considering what's going on with Tim Walz. The Minnesota fraud machine is continuing to be dismantled, as is the election fraud in California. So let's move right into that next story. Right now, the biggest immigration story in America is not who ICE is arresting, it's who the Trump administration is now targeting for getting in the way. From a courthouse mob scene in Illinois to a manhunt in New Jersey after an ICE agent was hit with a van, to federal conspiracy indictments tied to Antifa-linked networks in Minnesota, the message is unmistakable. This White House is not just enforcing immigration law, it's defending the enforcement machine itself. And once that line gets crossed, the debate ends and the criminal case begins. So is this the next phase of law and order under President Trump? I'll tell you why this matters, because for years the left tried to blur every line. They treated obstruction like activism, intimidation like protest, and chaos like compassion. They screamed at agents, surrounded vehicles, leaked operations, and created a climate where federal officers became targets simply for doing the jobs American taxpayers pay them to do. Under the Biden administration, that lawlessness was indulged, excused, and politically useful. Under President Trump, that era is far over. So what we're witnessing now is a very deliberate escalation in enforcement priorities. First, the administration shut down the border. Then it turned to deportations, gangs, cartels, and trafficking. Now comes the next layer. Anyone who obstructs, coordinates against, or assaults or materially supports attacks on federal immigration operations is being treated as part of the problem, not a bystander to it. That means arrests, indictments, press conferences, and public warnings designed to send one unmistakable signal. Touch a federal officer, interfere with an operation, and the full power of the United States government is coming for you. And speaking of protecting what matters, let me take a quick second to tell you about something that can help protect your own health and energy. You've probably seen the clip of Joe Rogan with Mel Gibson talking about serious health struggles and dramatic turnarounds. Rogan mentions light-based therapies working at the cellular level. Gibson says it plainly the stuff works. That caught my attention because I watched something similar in my own home. My wife dealt with constant discomfort and anxiety for far too long, and finding relief changed everything. And that's why I want to tell you about red light therapy from Jonathan Otto. If you've been looking for a natural way to support recovery, energy, and overall wellness, go to myredlight.com and see what's available. And check out the interviews on this channel. Use NNN25 for individual items or NNN30 for bundles. Small daily steps can make a real difference, and this may be one worth taking for yourself today. Now back to the story that shows the Trump administration is done letting radicals bully federal law enforcement. What makes this bigger than one ugly confrontation is the pattern. In Illinois, activists screamed in agents' faces while ICE executed a lawful warrant. In Portland, federal charges followed anti-ICE violence. In New Jersey, a suspect allegedly hit an ICE agent with a vehicle and triggered a manhunt. In Minnesota, prosecutors are not talking about one hothead. They're talking about conspiracy, coordination, and material support. That's the twist. The administration is moving past one-off incidents and towards dismantling the networks, the enablers, and the street-level intimidation campaign around immigration enforcement. The massive manhunt underway after ICE-involved shooting in New Jersey tried ramming an agent and got shot and ran.
Right now in New Jersey for a suspect accused of hitting an ICE agent with their car during an attempted arrest. It happened earlier today, and investigators say the agent fired a shot at the car as it sped away. Correspondent Alexis McAdams is live in New York with the latest. Hi, Alexis.
Hey, John. So right now the feds are working to track down the driver who hit an ICE agent with his van and took off. We want to show you the scene. It happened around 9:30 this morning, so it was pretty active then in South Jersey. ICE telling Fox the agents were conducting a targeted traffic stop. So they say they knew exactly who they were looking for, had been following this person, trying to track down that target during the investigation. But the driver wouldn't stop, wouldn't pull over, and authorities say he just sped off and hit one ICE agent with the van. That agent opened fire, and according to local police, at least one of those bullets hit the back of the van.
Incident occurred at 9:28 at 1400 Route 72. Back window was shot at by the officer. Last seen heading eastbound Route 72.
So the ICE agent who was hit by that car is expected to be okay. No major injuries were reported, but we're waiting to get another update. The local police in Stafford Township, New Jersey, say they were not involved in the operation. Their statement, John, almost wanted to make that so clear to people. Say, hey, we're not working with ICE here. The department following New Jersey's strict anti-ICE laws set under Democrat.
So that was New Jersey. An ICE agent rammed suspect on the run. Local officials scrambling now. Watch the same anti-ICE mob playbook in Illinois where activists screamed in agents' faces even after being told a valid warrant was in hand. This happened in St. Charles, Illinois, Kane County Courthouse. They stated they had a warrant and told the crowd to back up. Activists got in their faces, repeatedly screamed, "Where's your warrant?" After being told they had one, then unleashed nonstop abuse. You're being an a-hole. I mean, you can see what's on your screen here, so I'm warning you, there is some strong language here in this clip.
Tell you, get out of the car. I'm gonna break your window.
Where's your warrant? Where's your warrant? Where's your warrant? Where's your warrant?
Hey.
Where's your warrant?
I got a warrant for his arrest. Open the door. I'm gonna break your window.
Where's your
Back
warrant?
away.
No.
Back away.
Where's
Open
your
the door.
warrant?
I'm gonna break it.
Where's the
I'm gonna break
warrant?
it.
You have your
Hey,
warrant.
get
Your
him out
warrant.
Back out the way.
Where is your warrant?
Back up.
We're legally allowed to record. We're legally allowed to record. We are legally allowed to record. We are legally allowed to record. You know we're legally allowed to record. Stop it. You're being an asshole. You're being an asshole. Stop. I'm recording.
You can record.
Where is your
You can record it
warrant?
back up.
Answer one simple question. Where is it? Where is your warrant? Answer. Where is it?
Stay back.
I am back. I'm
Stay
just
back.
asking a question. Answer. You're coming up to us. You're coming up to us. You're coming up to us. We're asking us to see it. Where is it? Where? Let's see it. Let's see your warrant. Where is it? You don't have it. You don't have it. I am back. I'm 6 feet apart. What directives are you throwing at me?
I'm 6 feet
Where
apart.
is your warrant?
What is this, COVID?
Show your face. Do you have a warrant? Can I see your warrant?
Please get back. Please get back. Thank you. Thank you. Please get back. Thank you. Okay?
He is very aggressive.
All right, let's go. I'm going to have you guys move because he's going to reverse. Here, I need you to get out of the way.
Don't touch me. Don't touch me. Your fly's open. Your fly's open, you dumbass. You idiot. You fucking idiot. You fucking idiot. You fucking moron. Pussy ass bitches. You pussy ass bitches. Where is your warrant? Where is your warrant?
Okay, you get the point. It's not just obstruction and abuse in the street. Now the hammer's coming down. DHS highlighting a Portland case where a protester allegedly smashed an ICE officer in the head with a rock, now facing federal prison time. This is from Homeland Security. We will not tolerate violent rioters attacking law enforcement. If you assault law enforcement, you will face the full weight of justice.
Since June, nearly 24 people have been arrested on charges connected to ICE protests in southwest Portland. The latest, 24-year-old Jacob Hoops, a Reed College graduate. FBI investigators say Hoops threw a rock and hit an ICE officer in the head, then later used a stop sign to damage the ICE building.
So the prison sentence sends the message, and now we're seeing the crackdown widen in Minnesota. Federal prosecutors have unsealed an indictment against 15 people with alleged Antifa ties accused of conspiring against ICE operations.
Today, a federal indictment was unsealed, charging 15 defendants with conspiracy to impede or injure federal officers and other charges related to efforts of two Minneapolis-based Antifa groups that violently opposed the enforcement of federal law in our state.
So the Minnesota indictments didn't come out of nowhere. Homeland Security lays out when investigators say they found planning, material support, coordinated attacks on federal officers.
Working closely with the U.S. Attorney's Office, our investigation uncovered extensive planning, material support, and coordinated attacks against federal personnel and facilities. Our teams have worked tirelessly, conducting surveillance, reviewing camera footage, and analyzing large volumes of information to identify those responsible. I want to thank all the agents and staff whose dedication and professionalism made these indictments possible. Our message is clear. You may not agree with the laws. You may protest the laws, but you must follow the laws or face the consequences. It is not optional. We will enforce the law. Any attempt to undermine it through violence or intimidation will be met with decisive action.
So while DHS says the net is tightening on the street thugs, the media still keeps running interference. Up next, Ana Navarro flatly denies Maduro sent criminals north. JD Vance on The View today pushes back with the facts.
Used to work and be my colleague that have tried to find evidence of that. There is no evidence that Maduro was releasing people from insane asylums or jails like Fidel Castro did do. This was made up, and we just can't, accept it without pushing back.
Anna, we know that there were people who were released from prisons who were encouraged to come into the United States.
It wasn't like it was in the Mariel, Mr. Vice President. It wasn't where it was like a purposeful release, open up the jails, open up the insane asylums, and let people flood Florida. I've been through that in Miami.
If you go, it may not have been like Mariel, but if you go back to the caravans that were happening in 22, 23, we know that those things were funded. They were in some ways supported by the government.
There was absolutely
so I don't know how you define support or not support, but if people are encouraged to come into our country after having spent time in prison by their own governments, I think.
So Vance wasn't just there to swat down the lies. He also made the case for what the Trump agenda is delivering. Next, he lays out the mandate: border security, lower prices, and factories coming back to the towns the swamp forgot.
I think that's ultimately up to the voters, right? I think voters have every right to expect as much as possible out of their elected representatives. We certainly know that we were elected on a number of mandates. One was to close the border, which I think we've done successfully, exceeded expectations there. Number two was to lower prices, and there's a lot of work to do, in large part because of what's happened over the last few months in the Middle East. But as you said, oil, which got up to $120 a barrel, now is at $80 a barrel. That's going to be reflected in lower fuel, lower food, lower energy prices. But there's a lot more work to do. The thing that I'm proudest about most, because as some of you may know, I grew up in one of these towns that was forgotten by the leaders in Washington of both parties, is that you're seeing, that's Middletown, Ohio. That's my hometown in southwestern Ohio. It was a proud steel town. I was raised by a grandfather who was a union steel worker, is that those jobs disappeared. Those factories closed down. The thing that I'm most excited about is you do see a large amount of capital investment coming into our country. Factories being built, construction jobs are way up, manufacturing jobs are starting to catch up. So there's a lot more work to do. I think that we're making progress, but ultimately we're going to make our pitch to the voters in November, and they're the ones who get to decide whether we've done a good job or not, and that's how they're going to vote.
Exactly. That's the bigger point. Shut the border, enforce the law. Fraud machine starts breaking apart next. A major immigration law firm tied to tens of thousands of visa cases shuts down under allegations it fabricated abuse claims to game the system. One of the largest immigration law firms in the U.S. just shut down.
A bomb just exploded in the immigrant community, and fear is everywhere. Here's why. The largest immigration law firm in the United States, boom, just shut down. And why? Investigation for fraud. What was the fraud? Well, the attorney who owned the firm, her name is Alexandra Lozano. She specialized in visas for victims of domestic violence, victims of human trafficking, and the feds and also clients were investigating, and there was a civil lawsuit alleging that she was purposely faking affidavits, creating stories to get people visas, specifically a lot of people who entered without visas so that they could fix their status here in the United States.
So, I'm going to tell you now, this is the real turning point. The Trump administration is building a deterrence model. Not just arrests, but visible consequences. Not just cleaning up the border, but protecting the officers, the buildings, the vehicles, and operations that make enforcement possible. That's why the Minnesota case matters so much. Federal prosecutors are signaling that if the anti-ICE activity becomes organized, planned, funded, or violent, it can trigger a much broader legal response. Add the New Jersey manhunt, the Portland arrests, DHS promising decisive action, and a clear doctrine emerges. If you oppose immigration enforcement peacefully, that's your right. If you cross into intimidation, assault, obstruction, or coordination, you're not a protester in the eyes of the administration. Now you're a criminal target. And honestly, it's really about time. America cannot have a functioning republic if federal agents are hunted, rammed, surrounded, screamed at, and sabotaged for carrying out their lawful orders. President Trump promised to restore law and order, secure the border, and back the men and women on the front lines. This is exactly what that looks like. Vice President Vance said the border mandate has been met, and now we're seeing the follow-through. Consequences for the people who try to break the enforcement system from the outside, and as the immigration fraud scandal suggests, from the inside too. That's how serious governments act, and that is how you restore respect for the law. If you stand with ICE, if you believe attacks on federal officers should bring real punishment, if you think that the days of activist immunity should be over, share this report everywhere. Then comment below with a simple yes or no. Should anyone who obstructs or assaults ICE during an operation face automatic federal prosecution? If you haven't subscribed yet, do it now, because Next News will keep exposing the left and celebrating every America First win. But I want to make sure you get the news, because I've heard your messages, I've seen your comments, you're not getting notifications, you can't find us in the feeds. And there's a reason for that. It's because we're just telling the truth. Truth is treason in the empire of lies. So make sure you text Raw Feed to 844-840-4963. That's how you and I stay connected, even when the algorithm decides otherwise. And make sure you're celebrating all these wins by going to the merch shelf below this video. America 250 is here, so celebrate with us at shop.nextnewsnetwork.com. Okay, so we're moving from the anti-ICE saboteurs into what is going on in Minnesota. Trump exposing Minnesota fraud machine. Tim Walz is caught red-handed. We're going to get into the details right now. And if you haven't seen any of this yet, you can always scroll back in the feed. You can watch the reports, or you can check them out on Next News on X, Trump Daily Posts on X, as well as on our YouTube channel or Rumble. Right now, the biggest story is not the 8 SNAP suspects, not one Medicaid bust, and not even a Minnesota scandal. Is that the Trump administration is turning fraud into a governing test for the entire system. From student aid to Medicaid to food benefits, the message from Washington is simple. If taxpayer money moved without verification, someone is going to answer for it. And now Minnesota is becoming the symbol of what happens when public officials look the other way. The fraudsters use fake names, fake claims, and fake students, but the real question now is even bigger. Who allowed it to happen? I'll tell you why this matters to every American watching right now. Under President Trump and Vice President JD Vance, fraud is no longer being treated like a side issue buried in agency paperwork. The administration is building a whole-of-government crackdown around one core principle: verify everything, trust nothing, and hold officials accountable when they fail. The Justice Department just announced the largest coordinated healthcare fraud takedown in department history, charging 324 defendants tied to roughly $14.6 billion in false claims. USDA is publicly blasting SNAP fraudsters with mugshots and dollar amounts in its Tuesday Takedown campaign. And a Minnesota official flagged more than 7,700 so-called ghost students in the 2024 to 2025 school year after scammers allegedly used fake identities to trigger financial aid payments. This is no longer just about catching crooks at the bottom. The focus is moving up the chain towards administrators, agency heads, and elected Democrats who may have ignored the warnings while the taxpayers got cleaned out. When we're talking about systems that work best when you support the body at the source, let me tell you about something that got my attention personally. You've probably seen the clip of Joe Rogan with Mel Gibson talking about people close to them who went through serious health struggles and then saw dramatic turnarounds. Rogan brings up red light-based therapies and how they work at the cellular level. And Gibson says that plainly the stuff works, and that resonated with me because I watched something similar in my own home. My wife dealt with constant discomfort and anxiety for a long time, and it wore on everything. Then I discovered red light therapy through Jonathan Otto. We started looking into the science, and it made sense. If you want to learn more, go to myredlight.com or check out the interviews on this channel, but make sure you use NN25 for individual items or NNN30 for bundles. That's myredlight.com, and results speak for themselves in our own family. Now back to a story where the Trump administration says results only happen when somebody finally decides to verify the truth. And this is the twist that should have every governor, agency boss, and bureaucrat sweating. The target is no longer just the person who stole the money. The target's the official who failed to stop it. That's why the story is getting bigger by the day. Minnesota is being used as the test case because it appears to bring everything together at once. Medicaid concerns, child nutrition concerns, student aid, fraud, whistleblower claims, and serious questions about what Governor Tim Walz and Attorney General Keith Ellison knew. Now, this was posted by America on X, and this is Elon Musk's PAC. Minnesota defrauded American taxpayers of $12.5 million through a ghost student scam.
5 federal lawmakers are moving forward with a bill to combat so-called ghost students. It's a nationwide problem, and it's happening here in Minnesota as well. It involves scammers enrolling in colleges, applying for financial aid, then pocketing the cash without ever stepping foot in a classroom. Fox 9's Mike Manzoni joins us now to explain. And Mike, state colleges just got some extra money to actually crack down on this problem.
Yeah, Karen, this problem mostly impacts community colleges. The Minnesota state system says it flagged more than 7,700 ghost students in the 2024 to 2025 school year. The system says it received $3 million to help verify students' identities and prevent this fraud. A fraud expert walked us through how ghost students get away with it.
They enroll in college under a fake identity. Sometimes they might even show up online and pretend to engage for a period of time. They do whatever it needs to be done to trigger the disbursement of financial aid, and then they disappear. So the student never existed, but the money is real.
And the Education Department claims that the Minnesota State ghost students cost taxpayers $12.5 million. But the system disputes that, saying it never sent any money to the bogus students and, in fact, took them off its rolls. And that's another problem here. Ghost students take seats away from real students.
One online class that had 50 spots, as soon as it opened up, within 2 minutes, all of the spots were taken, right? So this professor thought he had like this really hot class that he was going to be offering. And it turns out only 2 of the students enrolled in the class were real. The rest were all fake.
And the bill at the federal level would flag colleges that enroll ghost students and allow for audits and other oversight measures. It still, though, needs to pass the Senate before heading to the president's desk, Karen.
Wow, interesting. All right, thank you.
So it wasn't just a few fake names clogging community college classes. Minnesota got hit with fraud pipeline that burned taxpayers for millions. Now, House Oversight is naming names, laying out how Tim Walz and Keith Ellison allegedly helped fuel a much bigger explosion. This from the House Oversight Committee. We just released a bombshell report exposing Walz and Ellison and their fraud. $9 billion in Medicaid loss, $300 million in federal child nutrition funds placed at serious risk. So they've just dropped the report. The cost of doing nothing, how Tim Walz and Keith Ellison fueled Minnesota's fraud explosion. So that report puts Walz and Ellison at the center of a mess. Next, a 20-year Minnesota employee goes public and says she was sidelined, ostracized, and put on leave after warning about the fraud. That Tim Walz was happily looking the other way. As Tim Walz's administration was referred to the DOJ and a Minnesota whistleblower gone public, she was intimidated for speaking out about third world fraudsters.
Fox, she faced retaliation after sounding the alarm about fraud inside the state government as the White House refers top Minnesota Democrats like Governor Tim Walz for a potential criminal investigation. Senior correspondent Mike Tobin live from Chicago with the latest. Hi, Mike.
And, John, there's been a lot of recent developments with the House Oversight Committee releasing their findings. The vice president is calling on the Justice Department to investigate whether Minnesota officials harassed or intimidated whistleblowers. And a state employee tells Fox she faced retaliation for speaking up. Faye Bernstein is her name, a 20-year state employee who worked in behavioral health services. She says she warned state leaders about weak oversight of contracts and grants years before the fraud scandals came to light. Bernstein says she was eventually sidelined, ostracized, and placed on investigatory leave. She told the House Oversight Committee she worked in an environment where employees feared being labeled racist for questioning fraud or mismanagement. Bernstein says that is exactly what happened to her.
Oh, it was very intimidating. You lived in fear of being called racist. And that is life-changing. That changes how you walk around in the world and how you do your work. I am not confident speaking up about things anymore. It is very impactful.
The House Oversight Committee says it interviewed nearly 30 Minnesota whistleblowers. Some allege that after reporting fraud, DHS investigators photographed their homes and vehicles, monitored their phones, and sought information about their children. Governor Tim Walz said he was unaware of employees being threatened, but that would be Intimidation, any intimidation, he said, would be inappropriate. Waltz and Attorney General Keith Ellison have rejected claims they ignored warning signs of fraud. Now, the vice president said if Minnesota officials facilitated fraud, lied under oath, or harassed whistleblowers, they should be held accountable. Now, Bernstein says she doesn't believe criminal charges are warranted, but said some state officials should be fired over their handling of the fraud. John?
I think they should be arrested. So that's how the whistleblower says the system punished the people. Now Comer goes further, arguing Walz and Ellison should face accountability for retaliation and possible criminal behavior. Here is Representative Comer talking about his report uncovering billions lost to fraud.
To me, like there was criminal behavior on the part of both Governor Walz and Attorney General Ellison. And our report is based on transcribed interviews from 9 career state employees from Minnesota, most of whom were Democrats, who did the right thing. They were doing their jobs. They identified fraud multiple times. And in each instance they identified the fraud, they reported it to their superiors. They got frustrated because nothing was happening about the fraud, so they went all the way to the top. They went to both Attorney General Ellison and Governor Walz. Each time they were told to stand down by the governor and Attorney General. And the state employees were relentless. They continued to report the fraud, and Governor Walz even retaliated. And this is another crime that I think Governor Walz committed. He retaliated against the state employees who were blowing the whistle on the fraud. So I'm so happy that Vice President Vance is doing a tremendous job with his task force. They're actually prosecuting people in Minnesota that are committing fraud. Now with our report, he has referred that to the Department of Justice, and I'm very hopeful that we'll see some accountability, because if you don't hold the elected officials accountable for fraud, they will continue to commit fraud.
So if officials are not punished, the fraud keeps rolling. Next, the Justice Department shows what a real crackdown looks like, with record healthcare fraud takedown targeting hundreds of defendants. The arrests are spreading, and Justice Department just getting started. Looking forward to seeing this massively ramp up.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Matthew Gagliotti, and I'm the head of the Justice Department's Criminal Division. Thank you all for joining us today as we announce the largest coordinated healthcare fraud takedown in the history of the Department of Justice. Today marks a decisive moment in our fight to protect American taxpayers from fraudsters and to defend the integrity of America's healthcare system. We are announcing today charges against 324 defendants for their alleged participation in healthcare fraud schemes involving approximately $14.6 billion in false claims submitted to Medicare, Medicaid, and other healthcare programs.
That's the scale of the cleanup when Washington decides to enforce the law. Now, the net tightens again, this time with USDA highlighting snap fraud takedown, including a suspect out of Minneapolis. This is their Tuesday takedown. Steal from SNAP get busted. These 8 fraudsters thought they could steal food assistance money and get away with it, from just over 1,000 all the way up to 1.1 million. So here are the mugshots. You can see Tamisha, 76,000. Jenny, 12,000. Tiffany Butler, 50,000. And how do you say this? Abdid Wahid Muhammad, 1.1 million. Wow. And then we have Jayanne, $1,000, and Jennifer, 21,000. Lena, 43,000, and Alicia out of Milwaukee, $2,800. Was it worth it? Was it worth it? Yeah. And this is where the story becomes explosive. House Oversight Republicans have now released a report arguing that Tim Walz and Keith Ellison fueled Minnesota's fraud explosion, citing billions in alleged losses and serious risk to federal funds. Chairman Comer says if elected officials are not held accountable, they will keep enabling fraud. Then came the human cost. A Minnesota whistleblower A 20-year state employee went public saying she was sidelined, ostracized, and placed on investigatory leave after raising alarms. Think about what that means. The Trump administration is building the case that fraud is not just theft by criminals, it's proof that institutions stopped doing their jobs and that some Democrats may have punished the very people trying to protect the taxpayers. So that's the real headline tonight. President Trump's administration is not treating fraud as a collection of isolated crimes. It's treating fraud as a diagnostic test for failed government. If fake students can drain aid, if bogus claims can hammer Medicaid, if snap thieves can game the system, and if whistleblowers can be punished for telling the truth, then the problem is not only the criminal, the problem is the structure that let it happen. And that's exactly why this crackdown matters. It's visible, aggressive, it's unapologetic, and frankly, it's long overdue after the mess left behind during the previous administration and inside blue state machines like Minnesota. If you want accountability, this is what it looks like. So share this report everywhere. Comment below and subscribe if you're tired of watching taxpayers get robbed while officials hide behind process. Simple yes or no. Should public officials who ignore fraud warnings face criminal consequences too? Let's have a conversation. Let's make sure you get the notifications that you depend on from the Next News Network. All you got to do is join the thousands of patriots who are already on the inside track. Text raw feed to 844-840-4963. That's how you and I stay connected. I'm not going to spam you. I'm going to send you the news that you depend on. Just one text message a night, Monday through Friday, so you can get the news you rely on to make decisions for yourself and your family. And let's celebrate all these wins. Go to the merch shelf below this video. America 250 is here, or just go to shop.nextnewsnetwork.com. Okay, more news heading your way. We got to talk about what's going on in California. Where did I purchase the DeLorean? You really want to know. I purchased the DeLorean in Crystal Lake, Illinois. That's where I purchased it. That was roughly, I think it was in 2021 is when I purchased that car. Yeah, it was purchased during COVID, because why not, right? Okay. And now we have so much fun with it. Really, we do. Okay. Is this thing? Okay. I just want to make sure my camera is set correctly. Okay, Brian, I'm ready to move on. Right now, the election fight just entered a whole new phase. President Donald Trump's no longer talking only about what happened in one race or 1 year. He's talking about the system itself. Who verifies voters? Who counts ballots? How long counting drags on, and whether Washington should step in when the states fail. And suddenly, what Democrats used to mock as a fringe concern is becoming the central battle of 2026. Why? Because a new criminal case, a California controversy, and even the polls are all pointing in the same direction. The question is no longer just who won. The question is, can Americans trust the rules at all? I'll tell you why this matters, because for years the establishment tried to reduce election integrity to a talking point, something they could sneer at on cable TV while ordinary Americans watched late counts, changing rules, and wildly different standards from state to state. But now the argument has moved. President Trump just said that if a state cannot run an election honestly, the federal government should do something about it. That is massive escalation, and it comes as a real indictment out of Massachusetts alleged an illegal alien lived under a stolen identity for years, pulled more than $400,000 in taxpayer-funded benefits, and voted in 5 presidential elections, including in 2024. That's not a theory. That is a verification failure. And when Democrats like Senator Alex Padilla attack the Save America Act, a basic citizenship protection measure, they're exposing the real divide. You see, Republicans want standards, proof, and confidence. Democrats keep defending a patchwork system that leaves Americans wondering whether the rules are built for citizens or for chaos. And while we're talking about fixing what's broken, let me tell you about something that helped me in my own home. You've probably seen the clip of Joe Rogan with Mel Gibson talking about people close to them who face serious health struggles and then saw dramatic turnarounds. Rogan brings up light-based therapies working at the cellular level. Gibson just says this stuff works, and that got my attention. In my own life, I saw something similar. My wife dealt with constant discomfort and anxiety, and it wore her down. Then we discovered red light therapy and started learning from Jonathan Otto. He's been a guest on this channel countless times. The interviews are eye-opening. You see, the difference was remarkable. More calm, better recovery, real relief. If you've been curious, go to myredlight.com and see what's available. Use NNN25 for individual items or NNN30 for bundles. Sometimes the smartest move is simple. Support your body naturally and give it the tools to heal itself. Now back to the story, because what's happening on elections is getting harder for the media to spin away. And I'll tell you, this is the twist the media doesn't want to admit. This is no longer mainly about proving one isolated act of fraud. It's about whether the election system is designed in a way that invites doubt. Why are ballots counted weeks later in some places? Why are verification standards all over the map? Why is proof of citizenship treated like some radical idea? Why is California becoming the example everybody points to, either as a warning sign or as the model? See, that's what the left wants to spread. And that's where this battle is heading. President Trump dropping a bombshell calling for the federalization of elections to crush voter fraud and protect every American vote once and for all.
15 states are you talking about?
I want to see elections be honest. And if a state can't run an election, I think the people behind me should do something about it. Because, you know, if you think about it, a state is an agent for the federal government in elections. I don't know why the federal government doesn't do them anyway. But when you see some of these states about how horribly they run their elections, what a disgrace it is, I think the federal government, when you see crooked elections, and we had plenty of them, and by the way, we had them last time, but go to 2020 and look at the facts that are coming out. Rigged, crooked elections. If we have areas, take a look at Detroit, take a look at Pennsylvania, take a look at Philadelphia. You go take a look at Atlanta. Look at some of the places that horrible corruption elections. And the federal government should not allow that. The federal government should get involved. These are agents of the federal government to count the votes. If they can't count the votes legally and honestly, then somebody else should take over.
But the Constitution says it should be states that administer elections, Mr. President.
Trump just laid out the case for federal action if states keep botching elections. Now, here's the kind of case that blows up the left's denials. An illegal immigrant convicted after voting in 5 presidential elections and pulling in more than $400,000 in benefits. Conspiracy theory no more. Lina Maria Orivo Hernandez, living under a stolen identity for more than 2 decades, indicted for defrauding the American taxpayer.
Battle over voter ID heating up on Capitol Hill. A jury just convicted a woman in Massachusetts of voter fraud. Prosecutors say that she also stole more than $400,000 in federal benefits. White House correspondent Aisha Hasni reports live from the North Lawn. Hi, Aisha.
Hey there, Martha. We're talking about a 59-year-old illegal immigrant who's been in the country for years, stole someone else's identity, and then voted in the 2024 presidential election. Take a look at this photo here. This is Lina Maria Orovio Hernandez. In this picture, you can see her, Martha, wearing that I voted sticker that we all get when we go to cast our ballots. She's also convicted of stealing $400,000, as you mentioned, in benefits. She apparently used her fake identity to obtain multiple state IDs and also a passport. So the president this morning, on Sunday, posted this on Truth Social. America's elections are rigged, stolen, and a laughingstock all over the world. He is calling for voter ID, proof of citizenship, and bans on mail-in ballots as he supports the SAVE Act on Capitol Hill. That's a Republican-led voter ID bill that is expected to hit the floor of the House this week. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries is claiming the bill is just an attempt by Republicans to rig the midterm elections.
The question is that what Republicans are trying to do is to engage in clear and blatant voter suppression. They know that if there's a free and fair election in November, they're going to lose.
Okay, but not all Democrats out there actually feel that way.
And now, me as a Democrat, I do not believe that it's unreasonable or to show ID just to vote. And I remind everybody that less than a year ago in Wisconsin, they added that to the Constitution by a 63%. So it's not a radical idea for regular Americans to show your ID to vote.
So that's why voter ID keeps winning with normal Americans, no matter how hard Democrats scream. Next, Senator Alex Padilla goes on TV claiming Republicans are the ones trying to rig the system with the SAVE Act.
You said it at the top. This is a solution in search of a problem. All the studies, all the audits, all the reports show voter fraud is exceedingly rare. But there's a couple things we know about the administration. Number one, they don't like dissent. They don't like people disagreeing with them. Number two, they don't like accountability. That's why they resist congressional oversight so much, whether it's in the halls of Congress, at detention centers, or anywhere else. And third, they don't like people voting against them or against their agenda, and they're setting the stage to try to rig this November's election in so many ways before ballots are even cast.
So Padilla says that securing the vote is the threat, which tells you everything about the playbook. Next up, Mike Johnson zeroes in on California's ballot counting and says the whole thing reeks.
Speaking of fraud, the president keeps saying that there's election fraud in the California mayor's race. What evidence is there to prove that?
You tell me, Manu. They are counting votes weeks after the election. We have entire nations with huge populations, like India, that can count their votes in 24 to 48 hours.
You're saying it's rigged like the president?
I'm not saying it's rigged. I'm saying it stinks to high heaven, and everybody knows that. Let's remove the appearance of impropriety. Let's have what a concept. Let's have votes on an election the day of the election. That's what many states are able to do. I think California is playing around with this.
But what evidence is there to prove that there was this rigged?
Look, some of these efforts are so diabolical and so far upstream it is impossible to prove. But I think everybody knows instinctively something is wrong here. And that's a concern. We need people to believe in the integrity of our election system. It is critical to maintain a constitutional republic. We're going to keep working to pass the Save America Act because it requires, as you know, proof of citizenship and a photo ID to vote. Those are also 90% plus issues in public opinion, and 70% of Democrats understand that's necessary.
Aren't you all just saying that because you've lost the election because the Republicans did not win in this election? This is why you're hearing that?
I'm saying that every leader of all parties should demand election integrity. And if somebody is opposing that, you should look at their motives. That's what I'm saying.
We'll see you later.
So Johnson's point is simple. When ballots drag on for weeks, trust disappears, and while Democrats keep defending their mess, the numbers are turning against them in a new midterm poll. Democrats have just plummeted 5 points in the 2026 congressional ballot, now 46% to Republicans' 44. YouGov economists, even CNN admitted Democrats' lead is declining. Now President Trump has achieved victory in Iran.
Take a look here. Okay, this is Congress National June polls, Dem leads, and this is NBC News, midterm years with the GOP press. Look at this. They're up by 5 points, but that's half the lead they had back in 2018 when it was 10 points, and less than half the lead they had back in 2006 with 11 points when Democrats took back the House in both of those years. And now the Democratic lead is on a single hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points. And it's this type of lead where you say, you know what, Democrats are ahead, but don't count your chickens just quite yet.
And Harry, we've been talking about this. As time goes on, you and I have kept on looking at these numbers saying it just doesn't look like the numbers we've seen when there have been waves for Democrats in the past. What are the trends in the other polls?
Yeah, okay, so this is not just one poll in which we are seeing this. There is this group of pollsters that are out there that are just not showing the wave you might expect given where the president's approval rating is. Okay, what are we talking about? We're talking about NBC, Marquette University Law School, in Ipsos. Look at where they were January and February, and look at where they are May and June. NBC, down a point. MU Law, down 3 points. Ipsos, basically staying the same.
So even CNN has to admit Democrats aren't building the kind of wave they were counting on. Next, Jillian Michaels says out loud, well, more Americans are starting to realize Trump may be the last line of defense for free and fair elections.
To be honest, it seems to me that he is the only one standing between us and the complete loss of free and fair elections. You know, I used to think that Trump was insane for suggesting that the 2020 election was stolen, and now I'm actually not so sure. Because these animals in California are not just changing election law, they're changing what elections actually are. And California is not the end of this story, it's the blueprint. And here's the thing. Everything we just walked through, that's the surface. That's the part that's documented, that's litigated, that's on the record and already legal. So no matter how nefarious or corrupt it may be, they made it legal. But here's what they didn't count on. They didn't count on us. They didn't count on this. The fact that 30 million Californians now have a roadmap. Not a rumor, not a conspiracy theory, but a documented, sourced, time-stamped account of exactly how this is done and exactly who did it. And you can't unknow this. And they can't unbuild what they built in the dark now that it's standing in the light. And the fight for California is the fight for the country, guys. And it starts with conversations like this one.
So that's the big shift from someone who wants to dismiss Trump's election warnings. And now the message is clear with the blunt statement from Homeland Security. American elections belong to American citizens. End of story. The only people who should be voting in federal elections are true American citizenship citizens. So it lays it out plain. Meanwhile, Los Angeles election fight gets even dirtier as Spencer Pratt hints he's got a recording that could force Karen Bass or Neetha Raman into disgrace.
Doing and saying something that would make her resign in shame. So Karen, Nithya, ask yourself, is it possible that one of your employees may have a recording of you doing or saying something that would force you to resign in disgrace?
And look, he said, I'm not one of the final two people in the race. He actually said you have a choice between Dumb and Dumber in another part of the video. This guy's not going away.
No, that's an intriguing little tease. We'll see what they produce. But this is something, and I didn't want to be like a Debbie Downer over the course of this campaign, and I thought that he's a very interesting, captivating person.
So it's not just accusations. Pratt is threatening receipts, and the pressure gets even worse for Karen Bass, where even her own brother is tied to a lawsuit hammering over the fire response. This from Trump Daily Post. LA Mayor Karen Bass' brother unites with Spencer Pratt to sue his sister, the LA mayor.
A while ago, we Palisades fire victims are now in the discovery phase of our lawsuit against the state of California and the city of LA. Over the next weeks, you'll finally learn shocking details of how badly Karen and Newsom screwed our town, and they haven't done anything to change. No more lies. Now, Mayor Bass has publicly spoken about her brother's home burning, and her office writes in a statement, thousands of people are plaintiffs in this action, which names 18 public and private sector defendants. The city's attorney's office is responsible for defending the city and DWP in this lawsuit. A California Post reporter caught up with Bass last Thursday, and she did not answer questions on this matter.
Mayor Bass, just a comment about your brother Kenneth suing the city.
See you at the next one, Mayor.
Okay. Just a comment, please.
So Bass getting hit from every direction, including from her own family, but after Pratt said he had the evidence, what happened next raises even more questions. A fire breaks out at his former campaign headquarters.
Learning a fire broke out at former LA mayoral candidate Spencer Pratt's campaign office in Pacific Palisades this week. A photojournalist with the Palasadian Post captured this drone video of firefighters on the roof. They say light smoke was showing from the building on Palisades Drive just after 6 on Thursday evening. It took firefighters about an hour to knock down that fire. Arson units were requested, but there's still no word tonight on a cause of that fire. In a social media post, Pratt claimed this was the work of arsonists.
So after the suspicious fire, the demand for answers only gets louder. Next, we get a sign this may be moving beyond talk, with U.S. Attorney in California expected a voter fraud probe to bring charges. U.S. Attorney in California suspects voter fraud investigation will result in charges. So what does this all really mean? It means that election integrity has become a structural argument, not just a retrospective one. Speaker Mike Johnson is calling out California for counts that drag on absurdly long. Jillian Michaels, not exactly a MAGA caricature, is openly saying Trump may be the only one standing between America and the collapse of free and fair elections. A U.S. attorney in California now suspects a voter fraud probe could produce charges. At the center of it all is one idea: standardization, the Save America Act. voter ID, citizenship verification, cleaner rolls, same-day clarity. That is why Trump's comments matter so much. The Trump administration and its allies are not merely contesting narratives anymore. They're building the case for national rules that put citizens first and restore public confidence. So don't let the pundits distract you with side drama and personalities. Yes, California is messy. Yes, Karen Bass is under fire. Yes, Spencer Pratt is making headlines. But the bigger fight is about the rules that will govern American elections going forward. President Trump sees it. Republicans in Congress see it. And more voters are seeing it too, which is exactly why Democrats are panicking and pretending that there's no problem. There is a problem. And the American people know it every time they watch delayed counting, weak verification, and total resistance to common sense safeguards. The answer is very simple. American elections should be decided by American citizens under clear, enforceable, transparent rules. If you agree, share this report everywhere. Subscribe if you're tired of the media cover-up, and I want to hear from you in the comments. Should the Trump administration push national election standards and proof of citizenship protections, yes or no? Let's have a conversation. Let's make sure you get the news you depend on. Don't wait for the algorithm to surface our reports. Don't wait for notifications that never arrive. Join the thousands and thousands of patriots who are already getting the inside track directly from the Next News Network, directly from me to their phones. They've already texted raw feed to 844-840-4963. And that's what I want you to do too. Join us. And make sure you're celebrating all these wins with America 250 upon us. Check out the Next News merch shelf below this video or go to shop.nextnewsnetwork.com. All right, folks, thank you for joining us tonight. We'll have more news for you tomorrow as we continue to track all of these stories. So we started with what's the latest out of the G7 with President Trump. Then we moved on to the terror attack that was thwarted by the FBI for the UFC fight. Gavin Newsom's panic, as well as the end of the Iran conflict, officially over. President Trump making it known. I'll have to see if the verification process holds up, though. We talked about what happened with the ICE obstructors and Tim Walz, as well as Chairman Comer is dropping the hammer on him with criminal charges, and of course what's happening in California and election integrity overall. So that's the show tonight. Thank you guys for joining us. I always appreciate it. Make sure when these videos drop on X or on YouTube, if you enjoyed them, if you got some value from them, copy the link, send it out to your friends and family via text message. Help us grow. That's the only way we can bypass the algorithmic suppression of our work. And we appreciate you guys for being our soldiers in the fight for truth. We'll see you tomorrow. God bless.